Hi, and this is Exploring with Em and Stu.
And today we are here in Norfolk, in the small parish of Fleggburgh, where we're going to take you for a little look at the ruined church of All Saints here in Billockby. So today we brought you to the ancient island of Fleggburgh, which was once made up of Clipsby, Billockby, Borough St Mary's, Borough St Margaret's. But today we've brought you to Billockby, which is really a tiny little parish now, isn't it? And it always was a tiny parish, only a few houses here really. But it's got quite a wonderful semi-ruined church here of All Saints. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of the history, and then we'll take you for a little tour of it. The medieval church of All Saints dates back to the 15th century, but there's also some mention of a 13th century remains here, so we're not too sure whether or not this could possibly have replaced an earlier church. The quintessential parish church here was clearly quite an ornate structure once, until sadly in 1762, when it was devastated during a storm, when it was struck by lightning, sending masonry crashing from the tower and through into the nave. Thankfully, the porch and chancel were spared from the destruction, and with the congregation only being very small, they decided that in fact the chancel would suffice as use, and they continued actually to use this until 1872, when a full restoration was carried out, leaving the nave and the tower just a picturesque ruin. The typical standard square medieval tower here is mainly made of flint pebbles, and if you just look up to the top there, you can see it was actually quite a bit taller once upon a time, as we can just make out some of the tracery of a window high up there. But if you just look slightly below it, you can actually make out some of the put log holes that would have been put there during its construction.
And here comes Emma from doing her introduction.
Yeah, just coming past and taking a little look at the rather splendid porch there, which we believe has been slightly restored, hasn't it, over the years?
Yeah, over the years.
I've certainly seen pictures of it, or definitely drawings, where it didn't actually have a roof. So I guess that's been restored with that thatch at some point.
But we are at the moment walking down this path from where we think it's like a shed now, don't we, inside there?
Yeah,
it's like
we believe, well, more will be revealed when we hopefully get inside that ruin. But I think they just used it for,
that sort of thing, lawnmower stuff, but we are walking past this section now, which is the ruinous section, which is called the nave.
Yes, this is the nave, which is in complete ruin nowadays.
Yeah, but we are going to be showing more of that when we get round the back, so stay tuned for that. But we are now coming up to the chancel, is that right?
Yeah,
the
this
chancel
was
now.
Originally the chancel, and as I said earlier, it was spared from the destruction. And with such a small amount of parishioners, I think there only ever was a small amount. They decided, like I said, this would be good enough for them to sort of huddle in until they could eventually sort of make it safe and restore it. Some, I think, over 100 years later. So I can imagine it wasn't the nicest place to be for some years. But there's a few things that I can sort of tell you about this.
We'll let Emma tell you all about it.
So, so here we are at the south side of the chancel. We believe that these windows here, including this door, are a little bit later. Very likely they were slightly changed during the 17th and 18th century, I guess, when they restored it. And we know that, as you can see, the Y-shaped tracery there, by sort of the flint around it supposedly, is a good sign that it's had some sort of restoration. But if we sort of take you for a little wander around the back there, I'm going to show you something which is actually a little bit more original. So I'll show you when I get there. And just coming round to the east side of the chancel, we've actually got some slightly more original features dating back to sort of when it was originally built during the medieval times. And this rather beautiful east window here, we do believe, is rather original to that time. Of course, again, it's had a little bit of restoration done on it over the years. But we just bring you around to the north side. There's not an awful lot to see around here, but we do in fact have another original window. And if we just take you for a closer look at it, you can see it's very similar to that one that we actually had on the side there. Rather ornate, almost Gothic style window, which is quite lovely. But unfortunately, inside this actual chancel, the majority of it is relatively modern, being sort of 17th and 18th century when they restored it. But we do believe that inside there is actually the original 15th century font. Now, we're not sure if we can get inside it, but we'll at least try and take a few little shots through the window.
Emma's shown you the nice ornate windows.
Yeah, in the chancel.
And we've seen the tower, and we've seen the porch. So now is the finale of this. Emma's going into the nave, aren't you, to have a look around the nave?
That's it, yes, because like we said, the nave is completely ruined these days and somewhat overgrown, but we do believe there's some rather interesting features inside there. So I'm going to see if I can see them through all the overgrowth and maybe point out a few little things to you when I get in there.
Okay.
And so here I am inside the rather overgrown, ruined nave. And it's not quite as large as we often see at these churches, but again, I suppose they didn't really need a very large nave because there wasn't very much of a congregation. But just behind us, through this ivy, you might just be able to make out where they bricked off that chancel. Of course, when they decided that they were just going to use that. And I'm going to walk straight down the middle of the nave, the best I can, avoiding all the stinging nettles, because this is, like I said, quite an original part of the church. Of course, they didn't restore it, so they didn't need to make any updates or anything over that sort of 17th and 18th century. But I don't know if you can just about make out behind me. It's got these rather lovely perpendicular sort of Gothic style large windows, which of course would have had stained glass in them. And we've also got two of them. I think there's two on each side. And we've got a few other little features that we can talk to you about. So just here, we've actually got that bricked off porch door. Like I said, we think it's being used as a bit of a shed these days for the gardeners that come and keep this churchyard rather beautiful. But I'm going to turn you around, I think, so I can actually really show you in some detail a few of these features. So here we have it, yet again. Here's the blocked off doorway to the porch, and it's rather ornate tracery above there, which is quite lovely, and again, I suppose quite original. But I've just spotted something just next to the doorway here. This little alcove, which you can just about make out, would have undoubtedly been a piscina where they would have washed their hands, I guess, before they came into the church. Again, very typical of these medieval churches. And have a little look to see what else I can see. But here, of course, is where the tower, the belfry, would have been. And again, look at the size of this tracery up here. This is quite lovely, huge big arch that would have been up there, of course, before it was damaged. And we've got that lovely, great big west-facing window there, which just goes to sort of show you how thick these walls would have been. And even higher up, of course, you've got quite a monumental crack. Of course, I can only imagine sort of the force of that lightning strike to almost blow the top of this tower to pieces. But just having a little look to see if I can see anything else. Sometimes you'll get a bit of an alcove that ran here where they used to keep sort of their flags and things like that, but no, there's nothing like that here that I can see. But let's just take you for another look way up the top there, because like we said, we believe that originally this was a good few meters higher, but of course that all came crashing down into this nave during that night. Well, I think actually it was a summer's afternoon, I believe, in July that the storm happened. But I'm not overly sure what these features are. Again, it could just be where the tower came crashing down. But that looks like the remains of a west window there, possibly. It's quite difficult to sort of make out a lot of these features because, of course, they're so overgrown and and rather sort of ruinous nowadays. But we do have a north doorway here, just a small one. Again, got some lovely little details there. And oh, here's an interesting little feature. I do wonder whether or not that actually is where the spiral staircase up to the tower would have been. It certainly does appear to be like that. But I'm going to sort of clamber over some of this overgrowth if I can, because there's actually a feature over here which is quite interesting, because we've actually got the stairs to the rood loft. And if I just take you through here, we can actually see the remains of it. I can see it better from the other side, so I'll try and take you for a closer look. But just up here was a spiral staircase, and I think that it came down to this side. And that would have gave access to this rood loft. Now, if you know anything about medieval churches, and specifically sort of the Catholic religion, then they often had a rood screen that went along in between the nave and the chancel, where they would have had the rood group, which would have been which would have depicted Jesus and Mary and St. John, I do believe, and they would have had some candles up there, and they would have needed access, of course, to get to that. Now, I do know that during Lent they actually covered up these for a little while. They called them veiled, they veiled them and they uncovered them again, I think in Palm Sunday, and of course they needed access to get to them. But of course, if you know anything about the Reformation, then you'll know that all these superstitious sort of things were removed during that time and destroyed in many cases. And often, of course, the rood lofts, because they weren't needed anymore, they blocked off the stairs, they removed all of those artefacts, and of course they were just either, like I said, either boarded up or just left. And that's why sometimes you sort of see staircases that appear to almost go to nowhere in these churches. But anyway, I don't think there's an awful lot more that I can really show you from the inside here. So I think I've waffled on enough. So I'm going to get back to Stu and we'll chat a bit more before we say goodbye.
And here we are, back outside this magnificent old church.
Yes, quite a lovely one this, isn't it?
It is.
And very much in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, we've got the place to ourselves.
Yeah, like I said, the ancient island of Flegg, which of course is not an island anymore.
No.
I think this, I think Billockby is the south village to that sort of original area. Not far from Acle, this one.
But it is on its own private island, because this is literally in the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
so it's on its own on island. It's quite cool,
yeah,
really.
we've been here in the past, and it's always been quite fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm not too much of a story to this one, is that there's no ghosts or anything like that. You know, we were trying to look for some interesting folklore. We couldn't find any.
Couldn't find none. But if you have enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. If you're a new subscriber or a new channel watcher, welcome. And yeah, it's been good, hasn't it? It has been good.
Absolutely. And of course, if you want to see a bit more of us, we do have our Patreon that you can join if you'd like to for £3 a month, and all the information will be in the description below. But here, from the rather beautiful All Saints Church here in Billockby, thanks for watching as always.
Bye-bye.
Bye.